Welcome, my friends. Welcome to my world. I'm your host, Kevin Rutherford. It is Friday, April 8th. We've got a jam-packed day lined up for you. Joining me here in the first hour will be John and Joel for an episode of Trucking Technology and Efficiency. And we'll continue into a second hour. I don't know if John and Joel will hang out. They can if they want. For a freaky, free-for-all Friday, anything goes. Let's end the week on a fun, positive note. So we're going to get started here in just a minute. If you are listening today on the TNC Radio live stream and you want to switch over and be able to hear that second hour, you can hear it at letstruck.com. We're going to open the phone lines right now for the first hour, which is primarily about fuel mileage, technology, emissions. We can throw in some maintenance stuff. It's all about trucks in this first hour. I've got some things I want to talk about. I'm sure John and Joel do as well. So phone lines are open right now, and you can start dialing 855-950-3835. It looks like John is on time today, but I think Joel beat him to the punch, so we're going to go in order here today. Joel, welcome to the program.
How's it going, Kevin?
Good. Where are you today?
Rolling across North Dakota, up on 94, catching a whole lot of wind, but the sun's out today, and it's not enough wind to blow you over like it was the last 2 days, so I'm actually moving, which is nice.
Yeah, North Dakota, holy cow. That's I didn't know anybody trucked in North Dakota, do they?
There's not much traffic up here, I can tell you that.
I know. It's not a lot of traffic issues up there, that's for sure. It's not hard to find a place to park either.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true. It's kind of nice. You can roll off any time of the day and pretty much park wherever you want.
There you go. I like that. So I noticed you've been very active with posts lately. Sounds like you got a lot of cool stuff going on. Tell us about it.
I kind of really opened up a poop storm, so to speak. not really intentionally, but was just doing kind of an apples to oranges comparison of a modern downsped powertrain versus our old traditional, 13 or 18 speed with 355 gearing. And what I bump into a lot of is we've got guys wanting to use the old manual transmission in a downsped powertrain, specifically the 13 and the 18 speeds, because they like those close steps on the transmission, which is very nice in a traditional powertrain, being able to split those gears and get a little extra power when you need to. And I've done a fairly lengthy post talking about how when you change the rear axle ratio, even though the steps in the transmission don't change, the RPM gets tighter in between there. So When you have a 355 with the traditional overdrive and you look at the 15% splits or 16% on an old 13 speed versus the 24% split on the I-shift, because of the rear end ratio difference, the RPM drops are just about identical in those top three gears at highway speed. So, I got a lot of heat from the 13 and 18 speed guys, and
hey,
it was just kind of funny because
I have to make a comment. The 18 speed guys are all Nazis. I've been getting heat from those guys for years.
Here's the thing, and I know some guys at Cummins Eaton just as well as I know at Volvo, and of course they saw my post on LinkedIn, and they were like, hey, that was a pretty cool post, but, that transmission was designed in the 1960s, and I said, that's exactly my point.
Right.
So, yes, and they're like, you should do a comparison with something more modern, and I said, hey, let's do a head-to-head. So they're trying to get approval to do a kind of a head-to-head comparison of the iTorque to whatever their latest and greatest offering is. And they had no problem with that post at all. But, man, people's heads were ready to explode, and I was the biggest idiot that ever lived. And it was crazy talking about the power flow through the transmission. Listen, I know they've updated that transmission over the years. It is not in the same league as the new Endurant from Eaton or the iShift or the Freightliner, the DT12.
Right.
They're just not. That's the bottom line. And when you spec a new truck and you put down-sped gearing in it, you are not doing yourself a favor by putting a 13 or 18-speed manual in that truck.
Yeah, I had a call yesterday where the guy's gearing was all wrong. He believed he had a single overdrive. I'm almost positive it was a double overdrive. He was trying to run in direct with 321s, and I said, that's just not going to work. And then the ultimate solution, I said, look, the only way to fix this, you have to figure out how to put an iShift in an old engine, because the transmission has always been, we've talked about this many times, no matter... many of us came to the gearing from different places, whether it was performance, fuel mileage, startability, whatever. But we all came to the same conclusion after you studied it enough. The missing piece to spec trucks right for years has been the transmission.
Correct. The reduction in the transmission to turn that aggressively down sped rear axle ratio to bring your ratios in line in your top three gears to the performance level that we would expect and still be efficient. Yeah, you're exactly right. And essentially what happens when we have that close step transmission, you're going to shift the gear and you're going to get maybe 150 RPM drop.
Right.
And you'd constantly, so what good does it really do with today's modern engines that are very strong at low RPM? It's just kind of a waste of time and money, really.
Well, and if you think about it, even a really good smooth shifter that can shift fast, you only dropped 150 RPM. How much momentum did you lose?
Well, and this is the problem. I done this actually with an older Volvo I had years ago. I had a 13-speed manual in it and put a 269 gear ratio in it. And if you want to use those overdrive, you're just constantly in motion. It's nonstop, and you get tired after a while. You just get sick and tired of shifting the truck all the time, and that's where the newer transmissions have really solved that problem and enhanced the efficiency and drivability at the same time. So putting that 18-speed or that 13-speed double overdrive transmission, and I get racked for calling it a double overdrive. It has two overdrive gears. I'm not really concerned how the power flows through the transmission. So if you have a 13-speed that's 0.73, 0.86, that's not the ideal situation for an aggressively down-sped powertrain.
Yeah, good point. And I'm sure the 18-speed guys know I was only kidding when I called them Nazis, but they're a little over the top sometimes with their reaction.
I mean, it happens, and I get it. Some guys like older trucks. I get it.
Which is fine.
And if you want to stick with exactly, well, you want to stick with a traditional drivetrain, and that's probably a pretty darn good transmission for traditional gearing. It's nothing that I myself personally would ever build for, operating in today's business environment, but. There's lots of guys out there that love to tinker and they love to work on their older trucks, and, so be it.
Absolutely. And we have worked out better ways of gearing those trucks and getting some to run in direct with, a single overdrive gear to use. And those things are all still valid and they still work. But comparing them to what you're doing today with a modern engine technology and modern automated transmissions, this isn't about are you a real truck driver if you shift gears or not. It's about you couldn't possibly shift as efficiently as these transmissions do today.
Right, and the whole point of the post was just to get people thinking about that. I know there's a lot of people who are still confused by And quite frankly, when you start digging into this, it makes your head spin.
It does.
It really does. I mean, I've got 4 or 5 people that I work with on a regular basis on this, and it's not easy keeping it straight. But nonetheless, it's out there. Out on my Facebook page, you can. It's just kind of funny when you read through it, I think. But it's all out there. The Cummins guys got a kick out of it. The Cummins Eaton guys, and what's cool is they want to do that head-to-head on modern systems. So that'll be interesting to see how that turns out if we can get it approved to do it.
Yeah, no doubt. I see this coming back sometime soon, too. Given today's fuel price, we can talk about modifications to trucks, speccing trucks, right, all of that stuff. But seriously, in today's environment with what's going on with rates and fuel prices, what's the single best way to control your fuel costs today?
You just slow down. There's
Exactly.
absolutely no doubt about it. You slow down regardless if it's old school or new tech. Slowing down, if you can,
Right.
always makes sense. So I always drive as slow as I possibly can to get the job done and still be on time. Sometimes that's 75 mile an hour.
Right.
Most of the time it's not.
Yeah. Yeah, but
So, that's what I always try to do. And
we've been in an environment of super high fuel rates, record high rates, and pretty darn low fuel prices up until just recently. And we didn't talk about speed all that much. I mean, I might have recommended it to somebody who was struggling with their cost and their fuel mileage, but it has not been a big topic. I have some calculators that I'm going to go back and dig up that I had years back when fuel went over $4 a gallon that shows the difference in time versus cost and, a bunch of other things that really pointed out when fuel prices get like this and rates are going down, how much savings there is in just slowing down. And it's hard. I'm sure we're going to get huge pushback on this because how many owner-operators today have never operated in an environment like we're heading into?
That's exactly right. If you've never really struggled through the high fuel, low rate environment, you don't know. And, all you know is the faster I go, the more money I make.
Right.
And that's just kind of, the way it has to be. And I've heard that multiple times from guys. I got a truck that's very high speed capable. I rarely run it up there. On occasion, I will. Sometimes just for kicks, Right. Hey, I'm gonna blow some money today, but
right.
It is what it is.
Yeah. All right. Good stuff.
So,
I'm sure you've got other things to talk about. I'm going to bring John in because I'm sure he's just sitting there chomping at the bit wanting to comment on this stuff. Aren't you, John?
Somewhat, yeah. I should have jumped in on some of Joel's posts, but I just don't have time for that lately.
Yeah.
What he did there, I'll relate it to what I do. We will change the ring and pinion in our car. I mean, we could change all the ratios in the gearbox to suit what we're doing, right? And we've had this discussion about splits and so forth. And I was well aware that the faster gear you have in your rear end, the tighter your splits become because it's a multiplication between the two related to road speed and RPM. So it's overall ratio that matters, and that's what controls how far the RPM drops when you shift a gear. And we will sometimes, if I'm in between two available gears for something, we'll actually change the ring and pinion in our gearbox. It's all one unit. It's a transaxle to get where we need to be. And so what Joel said there is absolutely correct on the guys who want to be the 18 speeds and so forth, to have those tiny splits. He's accomplished it with the rear gear. He's there. So that's what his does because of that. And with the crawlers and so forth in that box, you could bump up to a dock without smashing it. You can, pull out from a stop sign and everything else you need to do with it too. So, it was preaching to the choir there. And it amazed me how many people just didn't understand. It was interesting.
Well, and if we want to get really specific, let's throw in one more factor that is a factor. It's not as big of one, but tire size goes into this calculation too.
Again, it's overall ratio.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Right.
It's RPM at the engine and RPM at the wheel, or actually rollout at the wheel that affects it. So yeah, tire size definitely works into it as well. Yep.
Yeah. So
and reverse speed is another thing that we have to think about that most people don't think about. If you really aggressively downspeed a manual transmission, you're going to have a blistering fast reverse in it.
Yes. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, well,
but hey,
I don't know how Steve does it. He's got it. The one exception to his rule is our buddy Steve, and he's got that crazy old Meritor 10 Direct in it that really does have some pretty wide ratios from front to back, and it's got a big overall ratio, and it's only 10 speeds, but he manages. But that's Steve. He's superhuman.
Well, I was just going to say we have to remember Steve is a freak of nature.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, and I say that with with a smile on my face, because Steve was one of the guys that came down and saved me and brought me some tools when I was working on the coach at the truck show. So I got to spend some time with him, and he's a great guy, and he's worked hard at this stuff, and he's developed some pretty cool things, and he pushes limits on the old stuff the way, Joel, you push limits on the new stuff.
Sure, and that's a great thing.
Yeah.
It's not really fair to call Steve's stuff old, to be honest with you, though. I don't. Okay, yeah. So the base of that thing is an old Meritor 10 Direct, but if you look at the ratios, it's real similar to something new. And then if you look at the engine, I realize it's not turbo compounded, but it's using a VG turbo much in the same way the Volvo VG works. It's there to broaden the torque curve.
No, that's really
so by every metric, where his truck is emulating, a modern piece in a lot of ways.
No, that was actually kind of my point, that he's showing ways to take the older technology and kind of get some of the same efficiencies out of them.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's...
And he's the only one. I don't see anybody else working like he does on that stuff at all.
No, him and his son now. I met his son as well, and they're both kind of tuned into the same stuff on fuel economy. It was interesting to spend some time with both of them. And
on your way back west, you ought to pop by their little shop in Pewaukee, Wisconsin, and see the aero stuff they're working on. You'd be impressed. So I don't know if he showed you pictures or anything, but you got some cool stuff going on there.
Yeah, if I get a chance to, I'll definitely do that, because my new truck just went down the line last night, my iTorque truck.
Oh,
so
cool.
it is built. I should be getting some pictures of it later this afternoon after they run it through their dyno as it's coming off the line and stuff. So I'm hoping to have some pictures to post. But yeah, it's in existence. It's finally here, so that's cool.
Hey, Joel, when do you think that truck will be in Ohio?
It's going to the mod center to get the solar and air conditioning and all that put on there. I'm not sure how busy they are. I wouldn't expect it's going to be anytime soon, though.
Okay.
It's probably a month.
Got it. Okay. So, and I may be back this way again. I've been bouncing back and forth between Northeast Ohio and Saxonburg, and at some point I'm going to be heading back west. But John, to your point about going through with Wisconsin, not this time of year. I'm taking the southern route when I go back.
Yeah, it could still snow up there.
There's still crazy weather up in those northern routes this time of year. So I'm going to go where the sun is shining and it's getting warm. I've been in the cold since I left home, it seems like. Either one of you guys got anything else? I have one more topic I want to talk about before we get to calls.
Yeah, I guess just go ahead, John.
Oh, no, I just wanted to follow up on, we ended kind of abruptly there last week, and I was late to the show anyway, but the little bit of maintenance discussion we had there at the end, I can't go on enough about that sort of thing. The fellow bought the WPC wheel bearings. He had his wheel bearings, the surface treatment done on those, which, actually does work. But you can buy things and get the latest whatever, hang an air dog on your truck, do this, do that, a fleet air filter, whatever you want to do. But, if you've got maintenance issues other than that, it doesn't matter. People need to be really careful. And a lot of that stuff doesn't really cost any money, just takes some time. And, we don't talk about it enough. We're talking about new things and tunings and whatever. And How about basic maintenance, especially right now whenever the rates are low and the fuel's high? There's stuff you can be doing to your truck for free.
That's
Just cost you a little bit of time on a Saturday or whatever, and that makes a huge difference. Don't overlook that. I mean, it's so easy to get wrapped up in buying this or buying that, and some of it just doesn't matter. If the maintenance isn't there.
Yeah, it's a really good point. We have talked about it. We don't talk about it enough. I think I even have a document somewhere, and I'll go back and dig it up because, again, this is cyclical. When rates are through the roof and fuel's low, it's hard to get people interested in this. So you kind of feel like you're beating your head against the wall when you keep repeating it. But now is the time to bring all of this stuff back. The idea of speed versus rate, maintenance now, all of this stuff becomes critically important. Just to give you an example, I pulled up an old spreadsheet that I had written years ago, and I was just comparing the savings at different fuel economies and different fuel prices. And right now, I'm pretty sure we can easily say $5 a gallon is about average, right? I mean, I didn't look up the national average today, but I know we've been north of $5 a gallon for a while. And we still have a lot of trucks on the road that get about 6 miles to the gallon. I mean, I'm shocked that that's still a common number, but it is. And Joel, you've shown that 10 miles to the gallon is possible, even as an average, not just, on your best day kind of thing. So if we use those two extremes, at $5 a gallon, the difference in fuel cost at between 6 miles to the gallon and 10. At 6 miles to the gallon, you're going to spend $104,000 a year in fuel. At 10 miles to the gallon, you're going to spend $62,000 in fuel. That's $41,000 in savings. Just fuel savings, $41,000 in a year.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is kind of where the new technology really starts to come into play. Up until just recently, one of the issues that we had with the technology was it still took a certain level of driver skill to make that technology work right. Today, with systems like the Volvo IC, I know Freightliner has a comparable system. When you have these systems that can see up the road and they know what's going on, they can tell if you're on grade in the dark. Right. Whether it's a driver, sometimes that's hard for you to tell.
Yeah.
These systems are really going to start to close that skill gap. So even your new driver is going to be able to get in these trucks and really put up impressive numbers. I know they said that years ago when we first started to get the automated manuals, and it really didn't materialize.
Right.
We weren't quite there. We didn't understand the gearing, and we didn't have the shift logic that we have today. We have really progressed since then, and the new technology is really going to make a nice difference for people and really be able to cash in on the savings that you're talking about when fuel's high like this. And then on the flip side, the trucks can be very, very fast. So if rates go up and you're in a state where you can run 75 mile an hour legal, like I am right now, open her up and go, and you're still going to maintain a relatively high level of efficiency for that speed.
And that's a good point, because as good as we got at gearing trucks and setting up trucks right, and I'm talking about older trucks, not mechanical but electronic, before the smart transmissions and a lot of these other technologies, no matter how well we spec'd them, you had to spec them for a pretty tight speed range. I mean, your best option was if you could run it indirect and have a single overdrive to help out a little bit. But neither one was efficient as it could have been. We were compromising on both. Whereas now we're getting down to the point where you can really dial it in to be efficient in a much bigger top speed range.
So we looked at that particular issue that you're talking about with the iTorque, and what we came up with, we have a 35% wider speed range where we maintain efficiency than just a couple of years ago.
That's huge.
So that is big. Exactly right. And then we go back to when we talked about the topography of the country with the different grades and how the top gears match the grades. And essentially what we're trying to do is we are trying to match horsepower demand to what's required and what's available. That's what we're trying to match up. When we don't match those up, then we start to get into emissions problems.
Yeah, another good point that people don't even think about. I mean, that was never part of the conversation when we were talking about fuel economy, and now it has to be. Now we're looking at, let's throw in a couple other topics we've been, bouncing around lately. The idea that it doesn't look like we're going to be rebuilding these modern engines. It just looks like you're going to run them till they just don't run anymore, and it might be 1.5 million miles, and they're not burning oil at that point. But you look at now what might become our biggest maintenance cost is replacing something like a one box. And now if we can extend the life of those emissions, we're not rebuilding these engines, we can really drive down total cost of ownership.
No doubt about it. As we downspeed more aggressively, the engine's just simply not turning as many revolutions per mile, and that helps to extend the life. The architectures of the engine seem to be changing a little bit, so we're not really side loading the pistons like we used to in the past. We're spending more dwell time at top dead center, so we get a little bit better combustion going on. So there's a lot of benefits to the whole downsped concept. The OEMs are really embracing it. I think, Volvo was out of the box first on that. Freightliner followed suit, and they done a really good job with the DD15. The other manufacturers are coming around. I think Cummins is going to do some things, but in a different way that's going to be interesting to see. They're going to keep their baseline architecture, but do some things with valve timing and whatnot that's going to be real interesting. But all good stuff for sure.
Hey, John, isn't what we're talking about here, isn't this maybe not the entire trucking industry, but the people that focus on this kind of stuff? Aren't we getting closer and closer to what you guys do at the track? And not that we're that close, but we're moving in that direction. Really,
absolutely.
Yeah, really kind of customizing the entire drive line to work in a better, a wider environment.
Well, absolutely. And it's if you look at the gradability lesson that we got in that training from Volvo, that all fits with the way I will customize a setup for each track that I go to. But, they have to hit a bigger target. Okay, so this gear is good for this percentage of the country that has this grade. This gear is good for that percentage of the country. And through it all, they've got, and I like to call it more than customization, it's optimization. They're just optimizing. Everything from the engine architecture. They're optimizing the burn of the diesel fuel by that extra dwell time at the top. They're, getting the load off the piston to get more life out of it. And as you said, the business model is going to change. Okay, so you may have to change your one box or something. Or the Volvo equivalent of that, I'm not sure. But you do that at $1.2 million or $1.5 million, and nothing against reminiscing about the old mechanicals and shit. But when I was working at Bruce's shop back in the '80s, we were rebuilding big cams every 300,000. I'm sorry, it was.
Right. I know
it was. You're not going to convince me otherwise. I remember, it was 300,000, 350, 400. You're doing good, And okay, so you just drove this truck $1.2 million. I mean, shame on you if you don't have some money set aside or whatever to handle that one box replacement, which doesn't cost a whole lot more than that old big cam was to rebuild.
Right.
And put that on and go another, $750,000 and throw the truck in the garbage can and get a new one. I mean, you should have money in the budget to do that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the way people talk about engine mileage is like, the truck's got 2.5 million on it, but the engine's only got this. I'm like, yeah, okay. What about the window regulators and the dashboard and all that other stuff you have to deal with while you're driving up and down the road?
Yeah.
No, get rid of that shit. Just
go. I just
the business model, and there's some young guy who wants to start a trucking company who's willing to deal with that stuff for 500,000 miles or so. He will get that out of that truck if he's a smart businessman, and he'll go and he'll get him off the ground until he can get a new one, and that's how that'll work. That's going to be the cycle.
Yep. And yet here we are. Every once in a while, you still get somebody that calls and asks about replacing rods and mains. We gave that up a long, long time ago, and yet people still, every once in a while, it still comes up.
You really did something wrong if you're doing that. There's something up. There are other maintenance items. I believe in the damper should be replaced every half a mil or so. If you look at how that thing works, the viscous fluid in there work hardens much in the same way steel or any other thing work hardens. It's got a weight inside of it that's bouncing around and being worked around, and eventually the stuff hardens up, and you ought to replace that. There are a few little things you need to do. And overheads, I'm a big fan of overheads. If I had a truck, I'd do the overhead every 100,000.
Good point. So speaking of that, after the show today, I'm about to throw on some work clothes and pull this thing into a bay here and put a damper on it, and I think I might even take the bedroom apart if somebody here has time to do an overhead.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll get to the overhead because, I need somebody to give me a hand with that. Bruce and I are thinking about doing the Safety Plus ourselves. Bruce is here, so I think him and I are going to get in the garage and get a little dirty today and do some work on my front suspension, and I guess I could probably work over the weekend myself here, so I'd like to get all three done if I could. I was going to throw in
that Safety Plus. I'm pretty sure you could handle. It's got like 3 saddle clamps on it, and that's about it. It's not hard.
Yeah, the other thing I got to do when I'm under there, I'm pretty sure something got screwed on my ride height when the bracket for the sway bar busted, because my ride height valve is on the sway bar itself. And I seem to be riding too low. I don't have enough air in the airbags. I crawled under there the other day in the parking lot thinking I'll just go under there and adjust that myself. And when you raise the airbags all the way up on this thing manually, it just barely gives you enough room to get under that front suspension. Like I'm sitting there and the components are about 6 inches above my chest, and that's after I inflated it about 12 inches. And I'm thinking, are you an idiot? I started to grab the ride height valve, and I'm like, what are you going to do if this thing starts coming down? I'd be crushed. I thought, this is a really dumb idea. Yeah, I thought this is not a good idea at all. I need to wait till I can get in a bay and get this thing up on some ramps or something, or at least get some jack stands.
Oh, they've got those wheel lifts there.
Yeah.
The wheel lifts ought to be able to pick that thing up. So,
do you remember what each one's rated for?
I don't remember, but it should be enough to pick that thing up.
Might be.
Yeah, they were big. They were big.
I thought so too. I had an entirely different topic. Well, kind of. I wanted to talk about, but God, we've taken up so much time already. I brought this up once before that I don't even know how you say this. It's ACHATES, Acades Power. That's the company making that.
Acades, the Acades cycle.
Okay.
Yep.
They're the ones making that opposed piston, 2-stroke diesel, and some of their latest claims now are they will be able to meet the 2027 emissions, super low NOx, with no new after treatment. They can use the current stuff that's on the market, and they've tried a couple different things, some SCRs, some other things, but they believe that they'll be able to meet 2027 with no new emissions.
Well, speaking of that, and this is something that I'm working on or looking into with a couple of the combustion engineers that I chat with on occasion. So we're seeing a relationship between how much EGR goes through the engine and the RPM the engine's running at. And I think people are going to be smiling ear to ear when we we finish up, looking at this, and it's just looking like that, that EGR level is way down when you're out cruising at 900, 950 RPM to virtually nothing. So, you get out on a nice flat stretch of highway, there's virtually zero EGR going
Nice.
back into the engine.
Right.
Yeah, nice.
Well,
That's interesting.
again, the earlier part of your conversation, Joel, leads into that, like the lower piston speeds, the more dwell time, the EGR is put in there to soften the spike in the combustion, right? So it works like a spring, basically. Well, if you're moving the piston up and down a little slower, if you got that extra dwell time, it's not going to need it. Now, the NOx isn't created because you don't have the cylinder pressures or the spike in the cylinder pressure that creates the NOx. So that fits completely with the whole philosophy behind EGR. Again, we're back to the downsped and the piston speed conversation. That it's a win-win everywhere.
Yeah, everything revolves around that reality.
Yeah.
When I first started doing this, and that was brought to my attention by a couple of these engineers, these Swedes that I work with, I'm thinking, these guys are cracked, piston speed, yada, yada, it's RPM, it's all the same thing. And it absolutely is not. And I mean, everything revolves around that. That is the heart of your engine. And, it's extremely important to get that right.
Well, I'd like to spend more time on this because the engine was pretty interesting, and I finally found some of the data I'd been looking for. It's a 10.6 liter. They call it a 3-cylinder because technically you do only have 3 cylinders, but you have 6 pistons. The pistons actually come together to top dead center, right at each other. So it's a really short engine, which is pretty interesting. We could, change aerodynamics that way with such a short engine. Looks like it's 400 horsepower and 2270 Newton meters of torque. Does anybody know what that converts to? Actually, I did the conversion.
Yeah, it's going to be around 1,600, ain't it?
Holy cow.
Yeah, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys are right.
Like 0.8, I think.
1675. Yeah. Torque.
Yeah.
So
that opposed engine, the Germans actually had those in air transport planes. They had opposed piston engines.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead, John.
Kevin, if you're in front of your Google machine, Cummins actually builds an engine, the Katie cycle engine. I believe it's 4 cylinders, 8 pistons, 2 crankshafts. They run into each other in the middle for tanks and military application.
Oh, interesting.
And it's a beast.
Okay.
It's like 1,000 horsepower. It's a monster.
Wow.
Yeah, I believe that
didn't read anything. I didn't read anything on the emissions. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, it's just a replacement for the old VT903s that they had been running for since the almost 50s, I guess. That bigger V8. But yeah, I read about that engine as well. I hadn't heard anything about emissions. I'm sure they're not too worried about smoking the place up in a tank, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right. All right, we could go on and on. What do you say we jump to some phone calls? We had a bunch on the line. I think people got tired of waiting, or who knows, maybe they drove into a bridge abutment, but we lost a couple. So we'll we'll head off to Michigan to get started today. Greg, welcome to the program.
Hi, Kevin.
What's on your mind today?
I sent over an oil sample I wanted to talk to you about.
All right, let's take a look here. All right, this is a different sample, so give me just a minute. Whoa, what's going on with the silicon? Did you forget to put your air filter back in?
I did not. This is actually a rebuild right from PACCAR. It's an MX-13 EPA 13, and I was pretty scared with those numbers, too, with it being a completely new engine.
Oh, wait a minute, though. So this is like the first oil sample on a rebuild. How many miles on it? I can't find that yet on here.
I did about 17,500 miles on
Okay.
the oil sample.
Then we can ignore the silicon. You can't ever take your silicon reading after even if just the top end's been opened up. you can get some dirt in there no matter how clean the environment is, but a lot of the compounds used during that time show up as silicon. So we always see a really weird silicon number after it's been opened up, and especially if you do an entire in-frame like this. So we can ignore that. The only other high number is copper, and when copper shows up by itself, we really don't worry about it. It's usually just the oil cooler leaching, because and especially on a rebuild. I mean, you've got to get through the lead before you could ever get to the copper on the bearing. So really, I don't see any problems with this sample now that I know that it's a recent in-frame.
Sounds good. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
I wanted to make sure, because it is under a 2-year warranty.
Oh, yeah. And, on the warranty on an in-frame, probably the most important thing you're looking at is it going to burn oil? Because we've always had that issue of rings not seating once in a while, and you got to go back and prove it. And, but we're not seeing much of that kind of stuff anymore at all. So I think you're in fine shape here. So I just resample again at 25,000 or less, and I think a lot of these numbers. Now, the copper could go through the roof. Sometimes when these things start leaching, you're at 56. I've seen them go up to 400 and 500. And it doesn't hurt anything.
Sure.
There's nothing to worry about. The copper in the oil is too fine to even bother anything. So occasionally you'll see that happen. We really want to see that silicon number come down the next time. And we want to get it back to where it's under 10.
Sure thing. Well, most interestingly enough, should I look at putting an OPS on there to run the next 1,000,000 miles on this new motor to keep it as clean as possible?
My question would be, can you give me any reason why not to? Right,
exactly. So why not go all the way with it to keep it as clean as possible, right?
I was saying years and years ago, I don't know why they just don't put bypass filters on the engine from the factory, and they're finally starting to do it. It's not the same level of what we do with an OPS, but absolutely. I mean, I can't think of a single reason not to keep your oil cleaner.
And would a guy be worried about that warranty? Has anybody heard anything about warranty being affected by putting an aftermarket system on?
Yeah, this is actually a topic we've talked about many, many times over the years. Now, there's the law, because there are laws about warranties, and then there's the real world. So we got to talk about both. The law basically says that you can modify that thing all you want, and that does not void your warranty, unless they can prove that your modification caused the failure. And then that's just logical. Of course, the OEM shouldn't have to manufacture something that you modified and the modification caused the failure. Wasn't their problem. But if you modify the hell out of it and their part fails and you can prove none of your modifications caused the failure, then they cannot void your warranty. I mean, that's the law. Now, it comes down to the real world of proving what caused the failure if they decide they want to fight you over it. It's pretty rare, but we have had some occasions where the manufacturer said, nope, not going to warranty it. You had a bypass filter on. You went too long on your oil. And our response was, who cares how long we went on the oil? We have oil samples to show that oil was always within spec. So the oil couldn't have caused the failure. And we have proof of it. We have samples for the entire history of the truck, and the oil was always within spec. So you still have a warranty at that point.
Now, is it like the aftermarket systems like that? Are they cleaning the oil too much before we do an oil sample and you may not catch something?
No, because
is that a dumb question? Or?
No, it's not a dumb question. I think we all had that thought at one point. Like if the OPS has that secondary heating element that most other filters don't have, and that burns off liquid contaminants. If you were to get water in the oil, it would get boiled out. If you get coolant in the oil or fuel, it gets boiled out. But the labs understand that even though the liquid's gone, there are traces there that we can still predict how much fuel dilution was there, and they're accurate. We've been using them for decades. So it's a good question. The answer is the labs are able to make up for them. That's why they ask the labs, there's a question on there. What kind are you using bypass filtration? Because we will look at a sample differently if you're using better filtration.
Sure. Okay, great discussion. I appreciate it. I plan on running this and making my money with this engine for the next 1,000,000 miles. The truck does have 1,000,000 on it, obviously now, but it's time for the next life for this truck, and I appreciate
Excellent.
all of your information.
Hey, do you mind if I ask what they charged you for an in-frame on that?
It was ugly, but no, I had a few other things put on, but I would say relative about 38,000.
Okay, it's not as bad as I thought it could have been. Really, right? Yeah.
And that's right at Peterbilt. So
okay,
yeah.
Good. And the reason I ask is I think you're the first person I talked to that has rebuilt an MX.
Well, it's pretty rare. I haven't found too many guys either yet. But if I look at the original owners that owned this truck and they got their 1,000,000 miles out of the truck, then I felt like I had a really good chance to do so myself.
Yeah, yeah. It'll be interesting to see if some of these. What was the reason for the in-frame? Was it consuming a lot of oil?
Didn't consume any oil. It just let loose the crank snapped in the front of the engine.
Okay, so we had a catastrophic failure. Huh.
Yep, and it hammered enough to where it still ran to get it moved in the parking lot, but it was sure noisy.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's pretty interesting to watch one run with a big hole in the side of the block, too. But they'll do it. Yeah. Yeah.
So
for sure. I figured with that crank letting loose like that and that motor having so many miles on it, up to 900,000 miles possibly on that motor, I just figured I'd just replace the complete, because I feel like the engineers, I'm sure, got a hold of the rebuilds on those MX-13s, and they really manufacture and rebuild a good engine. So that's why I went with a whole new engine.
Got it. All right. Well,
instead of rebuilding it.
On that.
I just caught that. So you put a new engine in for 38,000.
Yeah, a new engine, a new remanufactured engine from PACCAR,
Okay,
not a brand new.
Got it. So they didn't in-frame or out-of-frame yours. This is a rebuilt engine from the factory. Got it. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Interesting.
So I was always looking for the specs on exactly what they do to the engines when they do the rebuild, but that's hard information to get a hold on.
John has some inside information he might be able to get for us on that from PACCAR, don't you, John?
Oh, yeah, I do. I've been in that engine plant. Probably the only thing that's used on your engine is the block.
Wow.
Everything else in there is going to be new.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's basically a new engine. Yep.
And
it's a pretty cool deal. And on your, I do have some inside info on PACCARs. Be really careful. The broken crank thing with PACCARs is usually related to a mechanical overrev. And I don't know if you're an automated transmission or not, but just make sure on a downhill you don't let it go too far. It's usually the mechanical overrev that causes the problem. On the Jake, whatever, that's when that's and there's a harmonic that's set up there. I don't know if that's to do with rod length or what, but the issue happens largely due to mechanical overrevs. Almost every engine failure you see in the bottom end of a PACCAR is related to a mechanical overrev.
Hey, John, couldn't we say that if we have the OEM rebuilding this thing from a bare block, every part but the block is new, I would have to assume they line bore the block, right?
Yes.
Wouldn't this be better than an original?
It should be, yes. It definitely should be. Now, that's a CGI block, compressed graphite, which is a really, really strong material. So it's not like the old days where the seasoned block was better. I mean, this thing's just better to begin with. It's a super strong block. There's not much to go wrong with it. And they're nice and light.
Do they warp less than a traditional block?
They don't warp at all.
Oh, got it. Okay. So the line bore's just cleaning some things up.
Yeah, the heat rejection from the CGI is much greater than regular cast iron, and they're really not susceptible to much warping or anything. It's fantastic. I think the new Volvo CGI also, isn't it, Joel?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Got it.
Good. It's really, really, really good material. Yeah.
All right, let's grab another call. Hey, before I grab this call, I don't want to get to the end and rush like we did last time. Can you guys hang out for another hour of Anything Goes? And it may not even.
I don't know if I can do a full.
I was going to say,
I'm at a racetrack. I don't know if your car's going by in the background.
Okay. It may not even be a full hour. The interesting thing, I love this new format. If I have 2 or 3 calls hanging around, I'll take 10 or 15 or 20 minutes and just do a couple extra calls. And when we're done, we call it quits. So if you guys want, if you can hang around. If you need to drop off, that'll be fine too.
I've got another thing on that last call.
Okay.
We don't talk about this much, but a rebuild engine, new to you engine. I'm a big fan of dumping the oil as soon as you get it home. Put some cheap oil in, run it for about 5,000 miles, dump that, and then put your good oil in that you're going to keep for a long time. I mean, even the best shops, that thing sat open for how long the valve cover was off or whatever, and you just don't know. I mean, even really careful guys could get some dirt into an engine. And that silicon number, and silicon's an abrasive, and so
That's
for the
a good point.
cost of oil, and don't even use good stuff. But put some cheap whatever you could find in there, and just dump it. Use it. At first, dump the stuff that came with it immediately. When you get it back from the shop, and then do like a 5,000 mile change, and then go from there.
Good point.
To try and do an extended drain on that first oil that came with that engine after it was just rebuilt I don't find advisable.
Yeah,
So.
no, that's a good point. All right, let's grab a call here. We're going to head off to Ohio this time. Mike, welcome to the program.
Well, Kevin Rutherford, Mike Olkowski, how's it going over there?
Good. What's on your mind today?
Well, I had to pipe in on the manual versus auto shift transmission. Being an old school.
Okay.
I ended up buying that 2008 Kenworth, that W900, that come with an 18-speed auto shift, which was an interesting setup. But the thing with the manuals, I'm in a Freightliner with a 13-speed manual, and I really like shifting. It's a preference. I know what it costs me because I have that auto shift, but it's like in 2019 the Corvette EL1 was offered with a 7-speed manual and an 8-speed automatic. The 8-speed automatic outperformed the manual in every category, but you know what? I'd have to have the 7-speed manual because I really like shifted.
I respect and I like that. I really do. When you know the numbers, you've done the research, and then you say, this is my preference. Absolutely. That's one of the reasons we're owner-operators and business owners. You get to make your own choices. The only thing I think makes sense is that you made an informed choice. And many of these guys will just stand there and just swear up and down that you're just wrong. None of that stuff matters. That's the difference. Now, I have a really important question, though.
Sure.
So I know if you drive an 18-speed, that makes you a real truck driver. But what if you drive an 18-speed auto shift, and now what?
Oh my!
I know.
You're a real poser at that point.
That's right. You're a poser.
There you go.
I have let that thing shift itself, I think, like twice in 1.7 million miles. I don't know who set up the shift points on that. And I live in Kalamazoo, right near Galesburg, where the Eaton test facility is, Eaton Fuller Test Facility. And I went over there to Brad Zapolowski. I think he's over there with Kenworth now. But, man, you got to move this shift point. The thing's revving up to 1,500 RPM. And I got the 600 or signature Cummins in there, you know. So anyway, he couldn't do it, so I just shifted manual. I pushed the buttons. I'm actually on my third shifter now because I wear the buttons out, pushing the buttons shifted.
Oh, well,
So
Hey, Mike, now you're really confusing the issue. So if you drive an 18-speed manual, you're a real truck driver. If you drive an 18-speed auto, you're a poser. What happens when you drive an 18-speed auto but you shift it yourself every time? Now what do we got to call you?
I know.
Yeah.
Now what are you? So beauty is it'll shift with the cruise control on. So this is how I drive. I got rid of the 355 gears and I got 279 gears in there. So I have to be 1,200 RPM in the big bowl to 69 miles an hour. 1,200 RPM, 18th is 69 miles an hour. So as you know, I drive 58 miles an hour. And so this is how I drive. I drive in 17th. If I come up to it, even an overpass, I come up to an overpass, I drop her into 16th, climb the hill at 16th, put her in 17th on the top, drop her in 18th on the way down, and when it slows back down to my 58 miles an hour, I drop her back in 17th.
There you go.
You just described what iTorque does automatically.
Exactly, right.
But I really like
that is exactly what iTorque does.
I make 500 shifts a day.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
That's right.
And I know that's true because, like I said, I had retrofitted an old Volvo years ago, similar ratios with a stick manual, and my God, your arm, you're just nonstop moving that thing, and I love to shift too. But God, it gets to a point where, wow, you just had enough. So
I'm pretty sure.
Absolutely.
I've never had enough. I really like shifting.
I don't know the I don't know the configuration of your shift button, but I'm wondering if your right thumb is significantly bigger than your left thumb.
That's so funny. I know. What a poser. 18 feet on the
and I'm also wondering, does your left leg do the clutch thing while you're pressing the button?
No, it just, I know. It's just a reflex.
That's right.
That's so funny. That's so funny. It's just a reflex.
That's awesome.
No, and there's no question that auto shift will outdo a manual. I mean, anybody that says it doesn't, they have less than zero concept of how all that works. There's no way I could do manually what I do with that auto shift.
There you go. Hey.
And again, because I can leave the cruise on. You shift up and down, and it just, it never grinds a gear. It just shifts. It just, damn that thing.
Hey, Mike, gotta cut you loose. We're right at the top of the hour, but you get the award for Call of the Week. I like that one.
Well, the next time I'll call, we're going to talk about the New Deal 2024.
There you go. We'll do that. You'll have to.
All right. Thank you, Kevin.
All right. Thanks for the call. Boy, I had so many comments now. I forgot half of them. That was an awesome call. I love that. I know what I was going to say. John, those cars sound like they're going really fast.
They are. I'm at one of my favorite places on earth right now, a little track called Virginia International Raceway in Danville, Virginia, which is just a really cool place right now. I mean, the area is really gentrifying and just really a neat area. Track, runs through some hills and S's and whatever, and they have hotel rooms on the front straight. And I'm in one of them right now, which is way quieter than if I were outside sitting in my car. But
wow.
So there's zooming by on the front straight as I'm here. But they've got really nice garages below the hotels, and it's almost like a country club. This place, it's really cool. If anyone ever has the opportunity to get down here for a race, they should. Just a neat area. I love this area. Danville, Virginia. That was the last capital of the Confederacy. I saw on a sign on the way here this week. Yeah, so
a little history lesson today too.
Really, really, really cool place. Yeah, really neat. On the manual thing, as you know, you rode in my pickup truck. I am a manual fan completely in every way, shape, and form. My 16-year-old daughters, I've already taught to drive a manual in my old BMW. I did buy them a Mini Cooper that happens to be an automatic, and I'm not happy about it, but they're going to share that. But it's got a nice little turbo 1.6 in it, and I was driving it around the other day. I just picked it up a week or two ago, and heading up a small hill, and the turbo started making boost, and things pulling really nice, and I just squeezed the throttle a teeny tiny bit more, and it dropped 2 gears. I'm like,
there.
Damn it.
Hey, hold that thought. I'm going to wrap up this segment, and we'll be back in about 30 seconds, and we'll start a second segment. Phone lines are open. You can follow the next segment at letstruck.com. Have a great week, and we'll see you on Monday. I'm Kevin Rutherford.